Welcome back, everyone. I'm hoping you are doing well. Today we have the 12 Tables of Roman Law by Magistra Vitae. If you're new here, Magistra Vitae or Vitae basically begins with the origins of Rome, and we go through the early parts of the Roman Republic. We talked really much about kind of like the monarchs now, as well as the conflict of the orders, some of the early Republic feuds that were being settled. Now, we're going to be talking about the 12 Tables of Roman Law, which I guess we're talking about the beginning of the legalities in Rome, which is very interesting. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hit that like button, it really helps. Let's see what we got.
Since the time of kings, Roman laws were kept by high priests as sacred books. Only the patricians were allowed to read and examine them. This meant that the old patrician judges could bend the law as they saw fit.
I can't remember when the Sibylline books came apart because I know that's kind of orchestrated, and it's I'm guessing it's either one or two things. One, there is like an overarching law or laws that are both secular and non-secular, right? So there's either where they're combined or they're not, and they're separate. I'm wondering how this is going to look.
Realizing this injustice, in the year 462 BCE, the tribunes proposed that the laws should be written down and published for everyone to see. For years, the patrician pushback was hard, but when the common folk were joined by the wealthy plebeians, the Senate had no other choice but to relent. They sent a delegation to Athens to study the famous laws of Solon and to investigate laws
Wow.
and customs of other Greek city-states. Upon their return in 451 BCE, the consuls and tribunes were abolished and replaced with the decemvirate. The decemvirs were 10 men wielding supreme power, with no right of appeal against their decisions. Their task was to condense all Roman laws into a single uniform code. By the end of the year, they wrote the 10 tables of law, but they were seen as insufficient. In order to amend them, a new decemvirate was elected. One of the decemvirs, Appius Claudius, manipulated the elections to reappoint himself and his lackeys. 2 more tables were written, giving us the 12 tables of Roman law.
Interesting, because of course in a similar concept, you have like the 10 Commandments. So it's an interesting like number to kind of like sit on. And then of course like the Bill of Rights in the United States, you got 10. It's an interesting number.
The laws were inscribed on 12 bronze tablets and displayed in the forum. Every man, woman, and child knew the contents of the tables by heart. In his writing, Cicero recounts having to memorize them as a schoolboy.
Isn't that crazy? Because like in the parallels of the United States, the Bill of Rights, right?
Unfortunately, the complete texts were lost to history,
Oh.
but remaining excerpts and summaries by later authors allow us to piece together the general content of each table.
So let's see.
The tables contain a number of curious provisions that show how detailed the laws were. For example, the 7th table states,
All right, we're going to go back and read them. So, one is procedure for courts and trials. Wow. Further enactments on trials. Okay. Execution of judgments. Rights of familial heads, or patriarchy, basically. Legal guardianship and inheritance law. Okay. Kinship. Acquisition and possession. Okay. Land rights and crimes. Torts and delicts, laws of injury. Public law. Sacred law, which I guess is more religious, and then 2 supplements and or amendments.
Curious provisions that show how detailed the laws were. For example, the 7th table states, the fruit that falls on a property of a neighbor is the property of that neighbor. Hidden in the 11th table is a law that would cause further strife between the classes. No patrician will ever marry a pleb. Considering the job of the decemvirs done, the people eagerly awaited the consular elections. 15th of May, the regular date of Roman elections came and went, but the decemvirs stayed in power. Ironically, the men chosen to formulate the laws were the first to break them. A surprise attack from the Sabines and the Equi put a pause on this issue, and two armies were levied. One marched on the Sabines and the other on the Equi, but they were both crushed.
Oh.
With these defeats behind them, the Decemvirs were at the height of their unpopularity when Appius sealed their fate by committing a crime reminiscent of Lucretia and the fall of Tarquins. He became infatuated with the young plebeian girl Verginia.
Can't marry a pleb.
Desiring the girl for himself, he ordered one of his clients to proclaim her a runaway slave. While she was passing through the forum, the man tried to take her, but he was stopped by a large crowd that gathered around the girl. Appius decided to call a hearing to ease the crowd. During the trial, Verginia was accompanied by her father Lucius Verginius, an army officer in good standing. Despite the irrefutable mountain of evidence that he provided, Appius proclaimed that the girl was indeed a slave. Eerie silence fell over the stupefied crowd. Seeing no other way, Verginius grabbed a butcher's knife and plunged it into his daughter's heart, proclaiming, "This is the only way to set you free."
Dang. By the way, keep the tables are over there on the left, hung up.
A furious brawl between the lictors and the people ensued. Appius, fearing for his life, wrapped his toga around his head and escaped into a nearby house. When the army caught wind of the events that unfolded, they gathered on the sacred mount. The plebs deserted the city and joined them in what would be the second secession of the plebs. Seeing the writing on the wall, the Decemvirs laid down their power and Appius was imprisoned. Anticipating the result of the trial, he ended his life.
Wow.
Horatius and Valerius were elected consuls for that year. They enacted 3 laws that further empowered the plebs. The first reaffirmed the sacrosanctity of the tribunes. Now the republic itself would guarantee their safety. The second prohibited election of magistrates with no right of appeal. The third and most important law stated that the laws passed in the plebeian council would now be applicable to the whole population.
Very important piece right there.
Like most of the stories of this early period, the life of Appius Claudius was probably a fabrication by later Roman historians, who aimed to portray the Claudii family as proud and arrogant aristocrats. The Decemvirate, on the other hand, is a far greater mystery. Both ancient and modern historians are confused by this episode of Roman history. Why was a group of men chosen to write down the laws given total authority over the state?
I mean, it's not too different as like a certain assembly, right? Like a certain like segmented part of the lawmakers and or decision makers creating it. I don't see how that's a far fetch.
Wouldn't their job be easier if they didn't have to run a country and wage wars at the same time? A possible solution to the riddle is that the Decemvirate was intended as a permanent new system of government, and the 12 tables were only the first item on their agenda. But as is often the case, absolute power
Yeah.
corrupted absolutely. Whatever the case, Rome was left with a set of codified laws that would proceed to dominate the legal system for centuries to come.
So that actually survives. Okay. So like the precedent of these 12 tables survive the Decemvirates.
With the Decemvirs gone, the plebs continued their fight for equality. They were still locked out of the highest office of state, the consulate. Ban on interclass marriage only solidified this imbalance. This ban was quickly revoked, most likely due to patricians eyeing the gold of rich plebeian families. On the other hand, the purity of the consulate was much harder fought. In 444 BCE, the consuls were replaced with consular tribunes. At first it was 3 of them, but it
Really?
would eventually grow to 6.
Really?
This office is highly debated among Roman historians. Some sources claim that it was a compromise to prevent plebeians from tainting the office of consul. No pleb could be a consul if there were no consuls. Other, perhaps more convincing sources claim that at this time Rome had the need for more than 2 military commanders. In any case, the leadership of the Roman state would flip-flop seemingly at random between the consuls and the military tribunes for the next 80-odd years.
Wow.
During the first years of the conflict of the orders, a prominent figure of early Roman legend emerged. His legacy was so great that the early American settlers chose to name one of their cities after him.
Philadelphia?
Join us next time as we discuss the life of a man sometimes referred to as the Roman Washington.
Oh. Interesting. I don't know what city this is. That was a total guess. Wow. Very interesting. I did not know that they flip-flop consular tribunes to consuls back and forth. That is quite interesting. But yeah, very simple video. Understanding kind of like the role that the decemvirate played, creating the 12 tables. It lasted as far as Cicero, so that's like probably lasted longer than that, probably all the way to the imperial regime of Augustus. So at least 400 years, right? Um, any other color or context, feel free to leave in the description or the comments. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out and bye bye.